And we are on to Paladin, which includes an imprisoned minion that is not a demon. Apparently, in addition to demons, we've gotten around to imprisoning Murlocs for all of their crimes against humanity, which is understandable because of what they do to low-level characters in World of Warcraft. This is Imprisoned Son Gil, a 1-cost 2/1 that is dormant for 2 turns, and when it wakes up, summon 2 1/1 Murlocs. This card actually seems pretty good to me. If you think about like how a lot of Murloc decks want to play out, they're kind of critical mass type decks. And, being able to play this on turn 1, and then, you actually are happy that it's not in play for your opponent to kill it right away. And then there's turn 2, okay, it doesn't come in. Turn 3, this comes into play, and you immediately Cold Light Sear them and have a board that's much harder for your opponent to kill. So this card I think is actually quite interesting. It obviously doesn't have like a dormant trigger that messes with your opponent or anything, but it has one that you can set up and plan for with health buffs or attack buffs or whatever else. I think it's actually very valuable, and if anything, upside. Obviously, being able to play this for 1 and get 4 power immediately would be great. But I feel like this is a card that you can very easily plan for and try to set up to have those more powerful Murloc turns without having to build to them and leave the minions exposed in the meantime. Next up, we have Libre of Justice. The Libre mechanics in this set are pretty interesting. It's one of the weird things about Paladins. They always seem to get like kind of like sub themes in each set that in some cases are like very, very heavy, right? Like we've seen like hand buff Paladin stuff. They had a bunch of hand buff stuff, bunch of stuff that like cared about being hand buffed. They had like, obviously mech was Shiro, I literally just gave you sausage. Bark. 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 We're just going to wait for him to stop barking. He'll stop. I think I need a 5-hour energy. Bark. Nope. I wish I was sponsored by 5-hour energy. If nothing else, it would save me a bunch of money because I'd buy a bunch of 5-hour energies. Shiro. Wow. He's just really going. I'll be right back. Okay. Well. I mean, Shiro has his rituals, right? Like, every day... Did they, like, move? He has, like, you know, the various, like, meals and treats and things that he gets. And he's just demanding his treat in the couch early. Because we've been waking up earlier and earlier. So I just went and gave him his couch treat. So he would stop working. Alright. No, it's fine. I think. Yeah, no, it's unblurried. Alright. So, let's get back to Libre of Justice. Alright. Next up we have Libre of Justice. Paladins have kind of this weird, habit of getting, like, almost entire, you know, like, new themes in a lot of sets. It's like, one of the designers even, like, joked, like, you know, here's where the Wheel of Paladin mechanics came this time. And Librams are an interesting mechanic in that not only are the individual Libram cards, but there are cards that interact with each of the Librams, specifically reducing their cost, which obviously can be extremely powerful to allow you to play, you know, something like this earlier in the game. This, I think, is actually the Libre of Justice. You know, you look at it first, and I think it looks kind of weak. Equip a 1/4 weapon, change the health of all enemy minions to 1. One of the key things there is enemy. This only affects opposing minions. So if you use this with, say, Wild Pyromancer, it also, by the way, only health, not attack. So you can use this with Wild Pyromancer and kill all your opponent's stuff and not your own. That's a really big deal. One of the big problems for especially mid-range Paladin-style decks has historically been that it is difficult to continue applying pressure while actually dealing with your opponent's minions. So this is very, very similar to, you know, equalitying just your opponent's stuff. Obviously, doesn't affect their attack like Shrink Ray does, but be able to equality your opponent's stuff and then like attack it. It A, makes it much better to be, you know, for a mid-range deck that actually has its own board, and B, gives you ways to like use a lot of the healing that Paladins had because you're able to attack into those minions with the weapon that it automatically equips. So I think this is actually a very, very powerful card. I feel like I've seen people say that they think this sucks. I think that even outside of the Libram cost reduction, this feels like it's actually a decent card because it allows you to deal with, you know, a bunch of this by itself is 6 mana, you know, attack and kill a minion basically because you reduce its health to 1 and equip the weapon, and then also has the ability to be cost reduced, interact with other cards, etc. So I just think this is a very solid card, and I expect it to see possibly even play outside of Libram focus decks. Next up we have Underlight Angling Rod, another Murloc card. 3-cost, 3/2 weapon after your hero attacks, add a random Murloc to your hand. One of the things that Paladin can struggle with, and one of the things that Murloc decks can struggle with, is running out of resources, right? Paladins, since Divine Favor rotated in their sort of aggressive decks, especially now that Crystology, which was, by the way, bananas powerful, especially at 1 mana, is rotating out, one of the things they need is the ability to actually generate resources. This is a weapon that is totally reasonably statted. You know, you get like the Stormhammer / now Fiery War Axe / Eaglehorn Bow stats, and every time you attack, you get another Murloc. So, you know, I feel like this is actually a pretty powerful card overall. Even in just like a regular mid-range deck that it doesn't necessarily have Murloc synergy, maybe this is reasonable because it just generates, you know, some decent stuff. I think it's unlikely that's the case because a lot of Murlocs are pretty low impact, but if you have any kind of Murloc synergies, I think this feels like it's a pretty strong card overall. So, where have we gotten in Murloc naming? This guy's literally Murgurgle. Murgurgle. I don't know. Anyway, it's 2-cost, 2/1 Divine Shield. And I think that Divine Shield on a Murloc is actually a really big deal. Murlocs are typically very fragile, and one of the issues with Murlocs is that you're looking to power them up with stuff like War Leader, but it is difficult to keep them on the board because they're fragile. And Murgurgle with Divine Shield obviously is much more likely to survive until the next turn and be able to be buffed by stuff like Coldlit Seer or War Leader or whatever else. And once that happens, once he does die, Murgurgle gives you Murgurgle Prime, which is an 8-cost 6/3 with Divine Shield that summons 4 random Murlocs and gives them Divine Shield. And one of the things about like aggressive decks in general, and like a Murloc deck, for instance, is that you don't want to have big endgame finisher type cards in your deck in general because they can glut up your hand. And if you end up having like a 7-cost card that means that you don't have enough stuff to actually play a powerful curve early on, you guys end up losing the game. Well, this is a extremely powerful card. 8-cost card that gives you a Divine Shielded board that you don't even have to put in your deck. You don't risk having your opening hand and disrupting your curve. You get it off of the Murgurgle dying and the Death Rattle, putting that in your deck. So a lot of these primes are cards that you imagine putting into like mid-range or slower controlling decks. This can very easily just go into an aggro deck, like a full-on aggro Murloc deck, and ends up just like giving you this late game finisher in the form of Murgurgle Prime off of just the Death Rattle from the initial body. So I think this is actually a very, very good card for a Murloc Paladin deck. And I think that we've seen between the Imprisoned Murloc and the Underlight Angler Rod a number of additional support cards that could lead that deck to being fairly strong. Next up, we have Aldor Attendant. Just 2-cost 2/3. Reduce the cost of your Librams by 1 this game. We talked a little bit earlier, obviously, about the other Librams. I feel like the Librams seem like they're pretty strong in general. I don't know necessarily how many of the Libram cost reduction cards you necessarily want to play in a deck. Maybe just play all of them in all the Librams. Obviously, that can easily go together. What else you play is a kind of a big question mark. One of the things that this all led me to think about is Pure Paladin. I've actually been playing a decent amount of Pure Paladin just for fun on ladder leading up to the release of the expansion and having some decent success with it. And it obviously loses a lot of the powerful cards in the form of the mechs and such. But the Librams are all powerful, at least reasonably powerful cards for that style of deck. And having a bunch of Paladin cards that your deck already naturally has synergy with in the pool of stuff that you can get randomly off of Crusader in the form of the other Librams and Libram synergy cards is actually pretty good for that kind of deck. So that's one of the decks that I'm actually definitely going to experiment with is pure Libram Paladin. And I feel like there's just a lot of things that fit very well together there that I'm looking forward to trying. I wish I had the Shiro cam right now and could show you how Shiro always comes down the stairs. There's this crack in the stairs. I'll show you this picture on my phone. I don't know. It'll be too hard to find on my phone right now. There's like the stairwell, and there's just a little crack. He sticks his head out, and he just like peeks down. He's like watching me from the little crack in the stairwell. He's like, "There you are. I see you. What are you doing?" But anyway, oops. I posted it on my Twitter not that long ago with like the caption like Shiro practicing social distancing, and it's just him like peering through the little hole in the stairwell. Next up we have Libre of Hope. It's a 9-cost spell. Restore 8 health, summon an 8/8 Guardian with Taunt and Divine Shield. This is obviously one of the cards that very much cares about the cost reduction of your Librams, because being able to play this for 8 mana or 7 mana or 5 mana with the cost reduction from the various cards that reduce the cost of your Librams is a very big deal. One thing that's very important to note, this is a targeted effect, which means that you will get it to return it to your hand with Lady Liedrin, which we'll get to briefly. We'll get to in just a moment. this is just a very, very powerful card. One of the problems with a lot of the healing effects in Paladin, stuff like Lay on Hands. Obviously, Lay on Hands is part healing effect, part card draw, but like the healing effects, a lot of them just don't really give you that much board presence. This gives you a huge amount of board presence with an 8/8 taunt Divine Shield attached to it. So I feel like this is quite a powerful card that really justifies playing the cost reduction Libram stuff, or rather the Libram cost reduction stuff in your deck, and can be a way to sustain. And obviously you have the sort of card draw, card advantage tool that they all work together with Lady Liedrin. Oops, that's just the token you get off of it. Next up we have Libra of Wisdom. This is basically Explorer's Hat, but it's a Paladin card. Give a minion +1/+1 and Death Rattle, add a Libra of Wisdom spell to your hand. So yeah, this is effectively Explorer's Hat, if you remember that card from way back in the day, League of Explorers. And I feel like it fits better in Paladin than it did in Hunter. Giving buffing your minions over and over and over works very well in a class that can generate additional minions, and also cares about targeting your minions, whether it's for Galvadon Quest. Clearly we need this in Wild. We're doing it. And also, crucially, the fact that this is a Libram does mean that all the cost reduction effects apply to it and the subsequent copies. So if you have like your Librams cost 2 less, you just play this and you always have this for free whenever you actually play it on a minion, which is very, very powerful. So obviously you can't just like keep playing. It's not like a Sound the Bells with Echo or whatever, but it is, I think, a very strong card in that style of deck that cares about targeting your stuff, that cares about buffing your minions, and cares about reducing the cost of your Librams. And next up we have Aldor Truthseeker, basically big Libram cost reduction card. This is the bookkeeper right here. He's got his big tome open to reduce the cost of things. 5 cost 4/6 taunt. So totally decent combination of stats to go with his ability. And I can easily imagine some versions of decks that are using the Librams not necessarily playing the 2-drop and only playing this guy, because this guy, obviously is much more impactful in terms of reducing the cost of your Librams, as well as just having a more relevant combination of stats and ability. That said, I feel like if you are playing like Libra of Wisdom, you're totally happy just playing early minions to have things to buff with it, especially when your buff is going to cost like 1 or 0. So I feel like the 2 buff guys, this is the better one. Obviously, I mean it's also the more expensive one, but I feel like if I could easily imagine just playing 2 of this guy in a deck and not necessarily playing the other one, and certainly not vice versa. And next up we have what is, I think, quietly possibly just the best Paladin card in the set. 2 cost, give a minion +2/+2, draw a card. Hand of Adal. I think this is just a fantastically powerful card that I'm very happy the Paladin has. Paladin kind of struggles with card draw since Divine Favor went to the Hall of Fame. And having a card draw effect, which is also a buff card, it's basically just a cycling buff card, I think is just very, very appropriate for Paladin, and just also very good. Being able to cycle through and find your key cards is very important for basically any deck. But yeah, I think this is just like really, really good. It allows you to trade up with your early minions. Makes stuff like any kind of early minion is so much more impactful when you're able to buff them in a way that they can actually trade up. And having the threat of not only Blessing of Kings on 4 mana, but also Hand of Adal on 2 mana, I think is a very, very big deal. So this card is great. It's just like universally awesome if you're playing a minion-based deck, and I expect to see more of this card than any other Paladin card from this set played. I think this is the best Paladin card in the set. And speaking of targeting your minions with spells, Lady Liedrin, 7 cost 4/6 legendary. Battlecry, add a copy of each spell you cast on friendly characters this game to your hand. It's a lot like Linessa Sunstrider, or Sunshadow, Sun whatever. Linessa, whatever her name was. The dungeons reeked of magic. Lady Liedrin, which, by the way, is the only hero portrait I don't have, because I refused to get back into World of Warcraft, and then I played Classic anyway for like 2 days, and then thankfully the servers were too overloaded and I couldn't log in, and I managed to keep myself from getting re-addicted again. Anyway, Lady Liedrin, the fact that this is friendly characters, not friendly minions, I think is a very big deal, because it means that if you say like, Holy Light your face, right? If you Libre of Hope your face, you get back that Libre of Hope when you play Lady Liedrin. That is a huge deal. The fact that, this can bring back your spell that generates an 8/8 Divine Shield taunt makes this so much more impactful than it would be otherwise. If you just heal yourself, and again, that card can cost like, 4 mana or whatever if you use the cost reduction effects. So I think Lady Liedrin is very good, and a very powerful payoff for especially the Libram-based decks, simply because Libre of Hope is probably the best thing that you can bring back with her. And that's Paladin. We're done with